In one of our previous videos, we talked about the capital budgeting or fixed assets, so long-term assets investments, and its analysis. So today we shift to working capital management or the analysis and management of like short-term assets and also short-term liabilities. So we call it working capital management. A working capital. So that's the uh, another terminology for current assets. So we call it like working capital. So working capital management is pertaining to the analysis and management of current assets. And of course, we'll talk about it in the context of net working capital. So we'll see uh, some preliminary terminologies, working capital and then net working capital in our technical discussion in a little while. But for now, let's imagine a situation. If you have a firm, you have current assets, you have long-term assets. So again, the uh, easy question or basic question that I could ask you is, if you have to choose, although realizing that both assets are important, but if you are to choose between short-term assets and long-term assets, which one is more important to the survivability and also the growth of a company? Think about it, right? So, uh, current assets and fixed assets. Which category is essentially more important, right, to the growth and the survivability and also the growth of the company? And of course, the answer is easy. It's the fixed assets. Fixed assets are your productive assets. You harness your productive assets or your long-term assets to uh, make money, right? To create, opportunities, and then of course to grow and to expand further. So we are not saying that current assets are not important, but again, the engine of growth and the engine of productivity of your firm is your fixed assets, right? Of course. Right? But here's the thing: if you don't manage the current assets properly, um, the firm might never reach its potential. It may get stuck or even go broke, not because of a fundamental problem, but because of the mismanagement of the peripheral problem. So let me give you an analogy. So if you think about maybe the easiest one that I also used in my previous video, think about a car. If you ask maybe 99% people would say, if you ask which part of the car is the most important component, I think 99% people will say that that's the engine, right? The motor or the engine. So the engine is the most important car. So if you drive a car and if you maintain the engine well, you change the engine to like a stronger version or a higher power one, of course you can run better. But there's a possibility that if you don't manage the some other peripheral parts of the cars well, the car might stop working in the middle of the road, not because of a bad engine, but because of some peripheral causes uh, like the the tire burst and yeah, any other things that you could imagine. So here's the thing: if you don't manage the like tires and then some other peripheral components well, then the car may also break down in the middle of the road, yeah, just because of these kind of things, right? Not because of the more fundamental and more what's it, more core problems like engine or battery or something like that. So coming back to the company, I think the analogy is similar. Your fixed assets are your engine, right? The engine of growth, your core assets, your productive assets. But working capital or the current assets, although they may not be as important as your fixed assets, but if you don't manage them well, you might also break down in the middle of the road. We'll see some items today, right, from cash, accounts receivable, accounts payable, and some uh, items of current assets and current liabilities. If you don't manage them well, they may create a problem, and you may stuck or you may break down also in the middle of the road just because of these problems are not the productive or fundamental problems to your fixed assets. Okay, so let's see the slides now. So basic definitions. If you talk about working capital, so working capital is essentially your current assets, right? Your current assets. But if you talk about net working capital, it means your current assets minus your current liabilities. That's why we call it net working capital. So you deduct your current liabilities from your current assets, your current net working capital. And if you want like a clearer measure of working capital, you might want to find a net operating working capital. So you only include the operating one. So operating current assets, you see like operating current assets. These are current assets uh, used for operating purposes, like your cash, your accounts receivable, your inventories, your prepaid expenses, and some other items that could be named. But some of your current assets might not be operating in nature. For example, um, if you hold short-term securities, right, marketable securities, this might be non-operating, but instead is investing. Although this is part of current assets because maybe you plan to hold the marketable securities for only several months or less than 1 year. So you understand what I mean, right? So you might have uh, investing assets in your current assets, right? Uh, Besides other operating current assets. So if you want if you want to specifically define the operating cash flows, then you have to take out those kind of current assets, right? Because they're part of current assets, but they're not for operating, but they're for investing, for example. Right? And same thing here, operating current liabilities. So this would be like your accounts payable, um, maybe deferred expenses, your deferrals, something like that. But if you want the operating current liabilities, then you have to take out something like notes payable, short-term notes payable, short-term bond payable, and some other items like that. Because although they appear on your current liabilities account, but they are not for operating, but they are for financing. Okay, so there will be a lot of numerous examples. And you can see here operating current assets minus operating current liabilities. So again, the working capital is essentially your current assets. If you talk about net working capital, then you deduct the current liabilities from your current assets, right? Net working capital. Okay, so working capital management. So the management here, so this is related to what? Like day-to-day management of your current assets and your current liabilities, right? Because we are talking about net working capital management. And the policy will comprise at the level of each current asset item and how the current assets are financed. You see an example here, some ratios of the double R company and industry. Okay, so the current ratio, quick ratio, is see here is lower than the industry average. So the liquidity position is not as strong as that of the industry. But we are not saying that lower current ratio means that the company is worse off. We can't say that, but we just know from the ratios that the liquidity position is not as strong as that of the industry. So if you have a weaker liquidity position, like a weaker current ratio, it doesn't mean that you are worse off, but maybe you hold uh, like less what's that the less magnitude of current assets. So you hold like less amount of current assets, so the ratio is lower, right? So less amount of current assets could mean that you put a lot of money into your fixed assets, right? And they're more productive. So again, we cannot say that it's worse off. We talked a lot about the financial ratios in another video about uh, like the analysis of financial management. So you can go to that video to review more about this. Right? Okay, so again, this is an example that we are going to use for our discussion. So current asset usage, so the current asset policy compared to the industry. See, again, the current ratio, quick ratio, and then the cash turnover, day sales outstanding, okay? Inventory turnover, okay? And then payables deferral. So we see that the current ratio is lower, so is the quick ratio. Cash turnover is also lower. Day sales outstanding is longer. Inventory turnover is lower. So we are seeing, in general, we are seeing a weaker liquidity position of the firm compared to the industry. And about the policy here, uh, see here the current ratio. So this is current assets to current liabilities, and because it's lower, we could imagine that it might hold like lower amount of current assets or a higher amount of current liabilities. So there are some names of policy, right? Some names of policy. Relaxed policy. We have relaxed policy, and then the tight policy. So relaxed policy means that you hold more current assets. You hold more working capital or current assets. Okay, so we call it relaxed. So you're holding more current assets. Imagine again, if you hold a lot of current assets, it means that the proportion of fixed assets is lower, right? In on your uh, assets account on your balance sheet. Right? But the other policy would be the tight policy. The tight policy means that you hold a relatively small or just fitted amount of current assets. Right? So you don't want to hold more than necessary. You don't want to hold the current assets more than necessary. So it's like uh, just enough or just sufficient for the day-to-day operations. Right? So you don't want to hold it again excessively. So you have the tight policy. Okay, so relaxed policy once again, you're holding the current assets uh, in amount more than necessary. Right? So relax, right? You're holding. So again, we can't say which policy is better because no, each of them might be more appropriate at a certain period of time. For example, if you use the relaxed policy, so you hold like excessive current assets. Of course, the benefit would be you have like a reserve. If something happens, you have reserve cash, right? The cash reserve. You have more than sufficient inventory. If there is um, uh, a sharp increase in demand in a short period of time, you don't have any problem because you have excessive inventory. So you can increase your production, right? You can increase your production without um, further ordering materials too much because you have held more than necessary amount of inventories. But on the other hand, if you hold, again, if you have the tight policy, the benefit would be efficiency because you don't hold current assets in excessive amount. So they're just enough, right? They're just sufficient. So uh, you can use you can allocate more resources to your fixed assets. And again, your fixed assets are your productive assets, right? The engine of your productivity. Okay, so you go through the first current asset is cash. That is cash. Okay, so we see cash conversion cycle. This is the method or equation that we can use to measure, the amount of time, the average amount of time required to convert from inventory into cash and to uh, maintaining the cash, right? From there's the conversion from inventory to the maintaining of cash. So we could divide the cash conversion cycle into three uh, sub periods, right? Or three components here. The first one is inventory conversion period. So as the name suggests, the inventory conversion period, this is the first sub period that constitutes the cash conversion cycle. So you can imagine, right? This is the average amount of time to convert inventory into sales. So we have inventories, right, in our firm, right? And we want to convert, of course, we want to make the inventory into finished products or finished goods or services, right? And then we want to sell them, right? So again, this is the period or the average amount of time required to convert inventory into sales, right? So inventory into finished products and then sold. So how to estimate this one? This is an inventory divided by cost of goods sold, but the daily one. So you have to divide it by 365 or 360, depending on your working days that you want to define, right? So the inventory divided by daily cost of goods sold or cost of sales, right? So what about the second one? So inventory conversion period, again, is the average amount of time to convert inventory into finished products and then sold. Now, the second sub period here, so it talks about the reality that not all of our sales could be done on cash, right? So some of them will have to be done on credit. This is natural. Cannot force all of the clients to pay cash because we might not be able to compete with our competitors who are giving the credit policy, right? Some the installment policy and something like that. So now the question is, what is the average amount of time required to collect our receivables? So the another name of this ratio is day sales outstanding. Right? Day sales outstanding. This is a famous ratio. So this is the average, again, the average amount of time required to collect our receivables. So how to estimate this one? This is our accounts receivable divided by sales, but again, the daily sales that we want to find. Right? Okay, so with these two subperiods, now you see here, the amount of time to convert inventory into finished products and to sales, and then the amount or the average amount of time required to collect our accounts receivable. So if we combine these two subperiods, we'll find the average amount of time to convert inventory into cash holding, right, from our sales. So what about the third one here? This is negative here, negative. So payables deferral period. So this also reflects the nature of business, right? So uh, on the sales side, we realize that we cannot sell all of our products on cash because we have to uh, some parts or proportion of the sales would be on credit, right? Because we have to give the credit facility to our clients. And on the other hand, when we buy materials from suppliers, we also have the opportunity to delay the payment. Of course, delaying the payment. So we don't pay cash, but instead we buy on credit, right? So we have like we need materials to make products, and we buy them from suppliers, right? From our suppliers. So we could delay the payment by taking a credit, right? Instead of paying cash. So we have the opportunity to hold the cash longer because we have the chance not to pay our suppliers right away, but we have the time given to pay on credit. So what is it here? This is your accounts payable, right, divided by daily cost of goods sold. Okay, so let me. So you see here again the three subperiods or three components here. So cash conversion cycle again. This would be the average amount of time to get the cash and to hold it, right, to maintain it. So of course, naturally, we want this to be as short as possible. So we want the cash conversion cycle as short as possible, right? So this the amount of time to convert from inventory to cash holding. So we want it as short as possible. So because we want this as short as possible, so what about this component? You see, mathematically, if you want the result to be as low, or in this context, as short as possible, we want this one as short as possible, right? So the lower the number, the better, right? So the shorter, the better. And similarly here, because it's positive, right? So the shorter, the better. The shorter the time required to collect your receivable, of course, is better, right? For the cash conversion cycle. And here you see this is minus. So obviously you want this one as long as possible. So this is like the nature of business, right? So if you have receivables uh, from someone, then you want to collect it as soon as possible. But if you owe money to your suppliers or you owe money to someone, then you want to pay it in a longer period of time, right? So that you could hold the cash longer. Okay, so this is the nature of the cash conversion cycle. Okay, let's see an example here. Let's say the annual sales is 660,000, and the what's that? The ratio of cost of goods sold to sales is 90%. So the gross profit margin is 10%, right? The gross profit margin is 10%. So cost of goods sold is 90% of sales. And another information here, inventory turnover ratio. So inventory turnover ratio is cost of goods sold divided by inventory is 10.8 times. Okay, so what would be the cost of goods sold here? So we know that the sales is 660,000, and then the ratio, right, cost of goods sold divided by 660,000 should equal 90%. So from this information, you know that the cost of goods sold is, yeah, multiplication, right? 594,000. So by knowing the cost of goods sold, then you can estimate the inventory because we know the ratio here. So the cost of goods sold to inventory is 10.8 times. And we just found out this one right here. So 594,000 divided by inventory equals 10.8. So you just divide it and you find the inventory, right? So the inventory is 55,000 in this example. And then you can estimate the first one here, inventory conversion period. Again, this is what? Inventory divided by cost of goods sold, but daily cost of goods sold. So 55,000 inventory divided by daily cost of goods sold. So you get 33.8 days, right? 33.8 days. So what is the meaning again? This is the average amount of time to convert inventory into sales. Get inventory to finished products, and then uh, they are sold, right? So we get the sales. Right? So the average amount of time to convert inventory into sales. So 33.8 days. So we don't see the further information on this one, but see we got the numbers. So the day sales outstanding here, or what's the other name again? Uh, collection period, average collection period here. So 45.6 days. So this is the average amount of time to collect your accounts receivable, right? So not all of your sales could be on cash, but some of them would be on credit. So this is the average amount of time required to collect the receivables. So 45.6 days. And this one, this is the amount of the average amount of time that you have to uh, pay out your debt to suppliers. Right? So again, this is the what's that the payables deferral period. So this is the average amount of time that you have to pay off your debts to suppliers or your accounts payable to suppliers. So minus, right? Because this is the opportunity to hold. So you have the opportunity to hold cash for 30 more days because that is the average amount of time required to pay off your accounts payable to suppliers. So in total here, the cash conversion cycle is 49.4 days, right? 49.4 days. So here again, if we dissect the components here, so we need these two, 70, what, 78, 79. So we need 79 days to convert inventory into cash, right? We need 79 days to convert inventory into cash. However, the cash conversion cycle becomes shorter because we have the opportunity to hold 30 days, right? Hold the cash for 30 more days because that's the again the average required time to pay off our accounts payable to suppliers. So in total, uh, the the cash conversion cycle is only 49 days, right? Again, the cycle, the required amount of time to convert from inventory to uh, cash holdings, right? Okay, so I hope this uh, could be clear, right, to you. So we are going to the second type of current asset, which is inventory management. So this is a big topic of its own, and we study this also in like operations management. Right? This is what's that, a combination between science, right, management science, and also art, right, the policy making. Okay, so inventory, see here, in this example, we have seen that the inventory turnover, the company's inventory turnover is relatively lower than that of the industry. So again, we are not saying that the company is worse off, but it could be a matter of choice, but it could be because of a wrong policy as well. So depending, we have to go deeper into the financial statement analysis or the forensic, right, into the financial statement. So inventory turnover, again, this is cost of goods sold divided by average inventory. So we get 10.8 times. So we're not going to talk uh, in details about the technicalities of inventory management. We have seen a lot in operations management, in quantitative methods and something like that. But you see here, what effect will this have on free cash flows if the company reduces inventory? So if we keep like lower level of inventory, right? So there are benefits and there are disadvantages as well. Okay, so in the short run here, we see reduction in inventory causes increase in free cash flows, and because we don't need to spend cash to hold the inventories or even hoarding to even to hoard the inventories. So we need less cash to do it. That's why the free cash flows might increase. So I think that's the benefit, right? So we don't spend money to hold or to hoard the inventories. Right? Um, so here's long-term effect. If the sales grow, right, inventory improvement are maintained, then future cash flow will even grow higher, right, in the future. Right? Of course, assuming that uh, the lower level of inventory will not affect the productivity of the firm, right? Assuming that is the case. So in the long run, the free cash flows will increase further, right? So improvement in working capital process is a gift that keeps on giving. So this could be true if again uh, the reduction in inventory holding will not affect the productivity, right? The production capacity of the firm. So what about the disadvantages of holding little inventories? So you see the name in operations management or uh, there's some fields related to inventory. If you hold, if you use a system like zero inventory system, right, or just in time inventory, so obviously you're holding less and less amount of inventory, or even zero inventory means that you don't practically you don't hold more than minimum level of inventory. So if you need the inventory, your what's that the your ICT, your information and communication technology will immediately order from your suppliers. Right? So if you use the just-in-time or zero inventory system, so what are the disadvantages here? Of course, the first one is the transportation problem, possible transportation problem in many countries. Of course, if you talk about like Japan or Singapore, uh, to large extent the United States or Canada, Australia, so they don't have any transportation, hindrances. Right? Traffic is manageable, and then the transportation, what's that? Transportation means are fast and reliable, so they don't have any problem. In many countries, that is not the case. So we might have like transportation problem, making the order and arrival of inventory uh, like hindered somewhere. So it will make the production slower as well. So can you imagine that if you need the materials right now, the inventories right now, and you don't have it, you just ordered, but and, and you had a plan for the materials to arrive maybe in 2 days, but in reality, it will arrive in 1 week. You can imagine the whole week would be unproductive, right? So it's quite unpleasant and inefficient. So you want efficiency, but you end up suffering from inefficiency. So another disadvantage would be inability to take advantage of uh, like increasing demand in a short period of time. You never know. For example, here during the uh, health crisis, healthcare crisis, and the health problem, like we have seen it for the last couple of months, if there's an increased demand for a certain medicine, and you have like limited inventory because you have the just in time or zero inventory policy, then you may not be able to harness the opportunity to get more sales because you don't have enough materials and you have to order. And you have to see the problem there. If you order a popular thing at the time of crisis, maybe many other companies are also ordering the same substance or materials. So you have to fight with other companies to get the materials. Maybe you're making like certain medicine or certain healthcare equipment, right? Healthcare equipment, you need certain materials or certain components uh, that become highly sought after during the period of crisis. So you see the problem there. You cannot harness the chance to increase your sales because of the increasing demand. But again, if you use the just-in-time inventory or you keep the lower level of inventory, then the main benefit would be the maintenance cost, right? The inventory maintenance cost, right? It will be like lower and more efficient, right? If you hold low level of inventory, so the security cost and then the storage cost, yeah, some other maintenance related costs that we could imagine. Right? Okay, so we'll continue with the third component. The third component is accounts receivable. Again, when we sell our products in the modern times, uh, yeah, from day to day we will have this kind of sales, the sales on credit. So we have to give the credit facility to our customers or our clients because we cannot force all of them to pay by cash because of competition. Right? So see here in the example, data from the example, the average collection period or day sales outstanding of the company is 45.6 days, whereas the industry average is only 32 days. So this is longer, right? Longer than the industry average. Again, we are not saying that this is necessarily worse off, but I think this should be like a caution or warning to the company that their collection policy is quite relaxed, compared to the industry average. So think about it. If you have this kind of like lousy policy or relaxed policy of collecting receivables, what is the main advantage? Of course, your clients will like you a lot, right? Because you have like a relaxed policy, very loose credit policy, right, in terms of the eligibility and also the the collection mechanism or collection policy. So you're quite relaxed. For example, you give a certain client, um, let's say 60 days to pay, but on day 61 you still do nothing, you are still smiling to the client. Of course, the client would be very happy. And there will be a rumor spread out in the market that says that you are a a kind businessman, a kind seller, right, or kind company, because you don't really exert a hard policy on collecting the receivables, right? So you're just still smiling, even when when the collection, what's that the account receivable period is over. So what is the main consequence of this one? Your sales might increase because the market knows, right, from the rumor that you're quite relaxed, right, in terms of the credit policy, right? So your sales might increase. You sell more because they like you, right? Because you're so soft. And what is the disadvantage or disadvantages of doing this? Of course, firstly, your cash flow will be late because you are so relaxed in collecting your receivables. So uh, your cash flows might be slower to come in, right? And secondly, and more importantly, some of your clients might run away, right? They take advantage of your softness, right, in the credit policy, and maybe some of them just disappear and never pay, right? They go somewhere, and they know that you will not find them because, yeah, you're so soft and you don't have the uh, mechanisms to pursue them, right? So what about the other way around? If you are so harsh, right, you have the uh, really tight collection policy or harsh collection policy. So this would be like the opposite, right? The opposite advantages and disadvantages. So what is the main advantage here? If you are a harsh business person, so you collect harshly, right, even with 1 day lateness, then your cash flow will be quite firm, right? You can make sure that your cash flow will come in relatively on time. And secondly, you prevent uh, you prevent the problem of running away in a more effective way, right? Because you're more disciplined, you're harsher to collect your receivables. What is the main disadvantage here? Of course, like the many potential clients, right? Hearing from your current clients, they may not want, or they may not be brave enough to do business with you, especially on credit terms. Of course, if they pay cash, there's no problem, right? Because they pay cash and transaction is over, you finalize the cash transaction, then everything is just fine. But if they want to, do business with you on credits, they might think twice because they have heard from your current or previous clients that you're so harsh. For example, with 1 day lateness, even with 1 day lateness, you send like debt collectors, and the debt collectors are really the hardcore debt collectors. Maybe they're like PhDs from Guantanamo or something like that. So you could imagine that. So they are ex, no, Guantanamo, so the PhDs from Guantanamo or from some scary places. So see, your sales might suffer, right? Especially on the credit side, right? Many of them may not be brave enough to do business with you on the credit transaction. Okay, so there are always advantages and disadvantages with every policy. So it's hard to say that if your day sales outstanding is longer than the industry average, then it is necessarily worse off. We cannot say that because, uh, again, you have your own advantages by doing that. And elements of credit policy, you could uh, you could encourage your clients to pay faster by giving cash discounts. Right? For example, if you give like a 2% discount if they pay within 1 week or something like that, right? And credit period, how long is it? Credit standards, uh, what are the standards that you put in place, right, for your clients, right, to do business or to buy your products on credit? And this one, collection policy, how harsh are you in collecting the debts, right? Like sending the debt collectors or something like that. Okay, so we have seen this one. So we have seen three items of the current asset account, the cash, inventories, and accounts receivable. And now we're going to see the other side, like account, current liability account. So we have a lot of current liabilities, of course, but out of many of the accounts, so many of your current liabilities, not many of them are operating in nature, right? Many of them are financing. For example, the bond payable, notes payable, right? And some other bank payable and something like that. So we are talking here about the operating current liabilities. And two of the examples here are deferrals or accruals, can call accruals, accrued expenses, right? And the other one is accounts payable. So let's see accruals, right? Accruals. So you have accrued expenses like accrued salaries, right? Uh, maybe utilities bills, right? Accrued utilities expenses. So maybe you haven't paid cash the electric bill, your water bill, right? A gas bill and something like that, right? And also salaries. This is very possible. So you see, if you have a lot of accruals, actually, you're retaining the cash because you haven't paid the cash, right? You haven't disbursed the cash. So we call it like free, right? Free debt. So actually, this is quite fun for the company because if you could hold a lot of accruals, it means that you can hold cash longer. You haven't disbursed the cash, and they are free because it's impossible. For example, this one, your employees. So let's say you're accruing their salaries. Uh, maybe you paid within like 15 days, uh, and it's impossible for them to ask for like compensation or charging you interest on the accrued salaries or accrued wages. You can imagine. So almost all of them are free, right? So this is actually quite compelling to the firm because now again you can delay the cash payment or cash disbursement, and you also don't need to pay anything on the cash that you're holding. So it's free, right? So consequently, it could increase the free cash flow for a while. Right? But usually this is like a spontaneous thing, right? Spontaneous thing. So uh, you might not be able to plan, right, or have planned control over the level of accruals. This just happens naturally, right? For example, you see the accrued expenses, but the maybe you have deferred taxes as well because of the payment dates, and also accrued salaries because of the calendar situation or something like that. So most likely we don't have a deliberate or planned control over the level of accruals. But we are happy to have this because we could save, we could hold the cash longer, and it's free. So this is the first component from the current liability account. And the second one is accounts payable. So this is very famous. Again, in producing your products, you need materials, you need inventories, and you have to buy them from suppliers, right? From the suppliers. And uh, can you see the logic here? You will have trade credit. Trade credit means um, you could owe your suppliers, right? Owe money to your suppliers within a specified period of time. And most likely they don't charge you anything, so it's free because it's like short term. It's based on like good relationship between your company and your suppliers. Let's say you are given uh, maybe 30 days to pay. So if you pay off your accounts payable within 30 days, then there's no interest charge on the accounts payable. And so most likely this is like uh, officially or legally free. We don't pay any interest charge, and this is spontaneous. Spontaneous means that you don't really think about it. Uh, you see, like a simple analogy, like maybe in the early morning, right? Actually you're still sleeping, but like, somebody uh somebody is knocking at your door, and you open the door. You find out that actually your suppliers have come like early morning, and your suppliers say that they had no, your supplier had put the materials at your storage house, at your warehouse. So the supplier is asking you, do you want to pay right now, or you want to pay 30 days from now? So you could answer the question easily without much thought, because it's free, right? So if you pay today, it would be free, right? No interest charge. And even if you pay within 30 days, it's free of charge. So obviously you don't need to think too much about it, right? But of course they will encourage you to pay uh, earlier or faster by giving you cash discount. But you see, cash discount is on the positive side, right? If you pay it right now, then you get or maybe if you pay within 3 days or 5 days, you get a discount. But if you pay within 30 days, you don't get any interest charge, but you lose the discount. Okay, so this is what we are going to measure. So you see from our story just now, if you take the materials from your suppliers, you put them at your warehouse, you have the opportunity to pay within certain days, right? Let's say 30 days. So if you pay off the accounts payable within 30 days, you pay nothing, no interest charge. You just pay of course, the principal amount, but there's no interest charge. But if you pay within, let's say 5 days, they might give you a cash discount, maybe 1% or 1.5% or something like that. So the only thing that you might suffer is to lose the cash discount, right? So there's no explicit interest charge, but we have implicit interest charge by losing the discount. This is something that we are going to estimate right now, using an example here. Let's say this company is usually buying $200,000 worth of materials. Right? And you see the terms here. The terms is 110 and net 40. They here. So if the company pays within 10 days, the company will get a cash discount of 1%. But if it misses the cash discount, it has the opportunity to pay within 40 days. right? So you see here again, we don't suffer from any explicit interest charge, but we might suffer from the implicit charge because we lose the cash discount. This is something that we want to estimate and compare, right? So let's calculate now. So what would be the net daily purchases? So the annual purchases is 200,000. So the daily purchases would be 547.94. Okay, and um, the 200,000, assuming that the 200,000 is the amount with cash discount. So what is the amount without cash discount? 200,000, the annual purchases divided by 1 minus the cash discount. So the amount without cash discount would be $202,020. Once again, right? The 200, assuming that the 200,000 is the annual purchases after enjoying or taking advantage of cash discount. So what is the amount without cash discount? It would be $202,020. So what is the difference? The difference is 2,000. See here. So if you take the discount, right, the annual purchases will be 200,000. But if you don't take the discount, so you miss the discount, the annual purchases would be $202,020. So the difference is 2,000, right? 2,000 here. So we call it here is the financing cost, right? Similar to the interest on a loan. Again, this is not, of course, this is not an interest charge, right? It's not interest on the loan, but similar, right? Similar nature, because again, if you buy the materials and take advantage of the cash discount, you pay 200,000 a year. Otherwise, you have to pay like $202,020 a year. So the difference, 2020, right? So this is like equivalent or similar to a financing cost. Okay, now next one, right? What is the so I want to use this one, the page. Okay, here, look at this again. Uh, the net daily purchases is 547.94. And imagine again here, if you want to take discount, you have 10 days, right? Otherwise, you have 40 days. If you don't want to take the discount, but uh, you're given like 40 days to pay off your accounts payable, right? For this one, and we have calculated that the net daily purchases, 200,000 divided by 365 is 547.94. So you could imagine, right? Your accounts payable will look like this, right? Day one, you have the daily purchases. What is it again? 547.94. Okay. Day number two, again. Day number three, day number four, and so forth. Okay. So think about it. If you want to take the discount, when will we pay again? See the information within 10 days, right? So think about it. If you want to take the discount, when will you pay? Of course, at day 10, right? You will not suddenly pay on day three. Although, yeah, you can do that, and you can do that legally, and so, but maybe a surprise will think you're a bit crazy because you have 10 days to get discount, but you paid on day three. It's unlikely, right? It's like hard to imagine, hard to believe. So most likely, if you want to take the discount, you pay on day 10. Okay. So what is the amount of your accounts payable? It would be 547.94 times 10. Right? You could imagine, right? So that would be the amount of your accounts payable if you want to take the discount. Why? Because imagine now on day 11, you have daily purchases again, but you pay off this one, right? Day 12, can you have daily purchases, but you pay off this one. So you see, the amount of accounts payable on this one, on this material, would always be 547.94 times 10. And that is this one, right? 5,479. If you want to take the discount, then the amount of your accounts payable will be around 5,479. What about if you don't want to take the discount? If you don't want to take the discount, how many days again? You can do it in 40 days, right? 40 days. So day number one, you have again daily purchases, 547.94, day two, and so forth, right? So again, the same question here. If you don't want to take the discount, when will you pay it? When will you pay off your accounts payable? Of course, on day 40, because you have the opportunity to pay in 40 days, right? So it will be quite ridiculous if you suddenly pay on day 17, because you have missed the discount anyway after 10 days, but you suddenly pay off your accounts payable on day 17. That would be, yeah, hard to believe, because you don't get the benefit of extending or delaying the payment of cash, right? So you see, 40 days. On day 41, you have daily purchases, but you pay off this one. Okay, on day 42 and so forth, right? The same thing here. 547.94, you pay off this one. So the amount of accounts payable, if you don't want to take the cash discount, is always 547.94 times 40. So we see here, if you don't want to take the discount, the amount of accounts payable will always be 547.94 times 40. So 21,000 here. So if you take the discount, the amount of accounts payable will be 5,479. If you don't take the discount, the amount of accounts payable will be 21,918. So what is the difference? The difference is 16,000. 16,439. This is called the costly trade credit. So this is the difference in the amount of your accounts payable between taking the discount and not taking the discount. Okay, so now we find the division or the ratio. We call it the cost of costly trade credit. Okay, so what is the difference again? Here, 2020. We call it what? Financing cost. Remember, right? The if we purchase the materials with discount, it will be 200,000. But if we didn't take the cash discount, it would be 202,020. So the difference is the financing cost of 2020. So this is the financing cost that we have to so-called we have to miss, right? The discount that we have to miss. Or this is similar to financing cost. And here the denominator is again here the difference between amount of accounts payable if you don't take the discount and the amount of accounts payable if you take the discount. So we call it that costly trade credit. Right? Costly trade credit is 16,000. So again here, the numerator is the financing cost and the denominator is the costly trade credit. Right? Costly trade credit. So we get 12.29%. You can call it the cost of costly trade credit, right? Cost of costly trade credit. So again, uh, in accounts payable, actually you are not charged any interest charge, right? Your suppliers don't charge you any interest charge or expense. But if you miss the discount, actually this is a similar situation as having like cost of trade credit or cost of costly trade credit. So we can compare here, knowing that missing the discount is costing you 12.29%, right? So you could think about it. What if I borrow from somewhere? Maybe I could borrow from a credit union. I could borrow from a bank or a sister company or anything like that. What will I suffer from there? What interest charge will I pay if I borrow from them compared to the 12.29%, which is the cost of costly trade credit? So you can imagine if I could find a bank that would lend me money within 40 days at an annual rate of 9%. So you can see that 9%. So it's better that I borrow from there, from the bank, and I pay cash to my supplier. So I will get the cash discount, right? Because I know that by missing the cash discount, my implicit cost, we call it here again, cost of costly trade credit, my implicit cost is 12.29%. So if I could borrow from a bank or credit union and the interest charge is 9%, it's better that I borrow from the bank and I pay off my suppliers right now, right, with cash to get the cash discount because it's cheaper to borrow from the bank rather than to miss the cash discount. Okay, so what about if you have asked everywhere and they're willing to lend you money within like 40 days for 40 days at 14%? So it's not profitable, right? The annual interest rate of 14% is not profitable because you know that even by missing the cash discount to this supplier, your implicit cost is only 12.29%. So you're not going to borrow somewhere else at 14% to pay your suppliers cash so that you get the cash discount because it's not worth it, right? Not worth it because it's cheaper even to miss the cash discount to this supplier. And the mechanical way of estimating this one would be the discount rate. So in our example here is 1%, right? And divided by 1 minus discount is 99%, multiplied by the number of days in a year, and divided by the difference between the discount period and the total days allowed. So see here, total days allowed is 40 days, and the discount period is 10 days. So 40 minus 10 is 30. Okay, so we get the same thing here, 12.29%. Right? So this is a nominal rate, right? Nominal rate. So if you want to find the uh, period, what's that? The effective rate. You see here we have two components here. So the discount divided by 1 minus discount is this one. This is like the periodic rate, and there are 12 periods, 12.17 periods. So if we simply multiply them, we call it like uh, nominal rate, right? Nominal cost of costly trade credit. Like this is nominal rate, but if you want to find the effective rate, it would be like 1 plus 0101, then to the power of this, and then the result should minus 1. Okay, so we get 13.01%. This is the effective rate. The nominal rate is 12.29%, like this one, right? So the nominal rate is 12.29%, but the effective rate is 13.01%. What is the difference here? You can imagine, right? With the nominal rate, you just multiply. So this is a periodic rate. Again, this is a periodic rate, and you multiply by 12 periods, 12.17 periods. So you are assuming that the periodic rate will be replicated 12.17 times replicated. But for the effective rate, you use the exponential or the power, right? So it's like compounding, right? Not not replicating at 12.17 times, but compounded. The amount is compounded by 12.17 times. So it's like uh, money upon money, right? Dream upon dream, right? So we get higher rate here, 13.01% for the effective rate. And then you have the cash management. You can use many things. So why do you hold cash for transaction? Of course, right? Transaction. You need to pay your bills. You need to pay uh, whatever wages, right? Salaries, and day-to-day expenses, right? And second reason would be precautionary. So for safety stock. So you might want to hold cash a bit more, a bit higher than necessary for precaution. Right? So you uh, store the liquidity a little bit stronger, and then compensating balances. Uh, maybe you need to put your money in a bank as a compensating balance. Right? Uh, in certain countries, you see, if you borrow money, they no, if you borrow money from a bank, the bank might require a compensating balance of, let's say, 5%. So if you borrow $1 million, the bank may ask you to put 50,000 of it in the bank. Right? It's still your money, but it's like frozen there at 5% of the amount that you borrow. Right? If you borrow 1 million, at 5% of it might be at 50,000. So 50,000 should be put and frozen in the bank. So we call it a compensating balance. So ways to minimize target cash balance, better synchronization between inflows and outflows, so better projections and the cash flow management. Use float. So this is an accounting terminology, the float, right? On the book, right? The on the what's that cash ledger and the at your front desk, right? There's it's called a float. So we are not going to talk about this here. We have seen some of them in the financial statement analysis video, right? Using the float, the accounting mechanism, right? The difference between books and lock boxes. I think this is still relatively useful in the United States, but not really working anymore in other countries because this is related to the checking system, right? The check, the checks that you pay. Because you can imagine, right? It's still a strong tradition in the United States to use checks or checkbooks. So, for example, if your company pay uh, your supplier with a check, then your supplier will bring the check to its bank, right? And then its bank will finalize the transaction with your bank. So it might take maybe 2 days or 3 days, right? Just because of the different locations of the banks. Maybe your supplier bank is located in New York, whereas your bank is located in Los Angeles. So you can imagine it will take like 2 days at least. But with lockboxes, um, every bank is creating or is building lockboxes in many cities. So for example, um, if your bank has a lockbox in New York, then when your supplier get your check and it goes to its bank, right? So the supplier's bank will just put the check into the lockbox of your bank located in New York. Right? But again, in other countries, this is I think not really uh, operational anymore. And then this one I think is more international in nature, wire transfers, automatic debit, the mobile transaction, which is a common norm or the industry standard at the moment. Okay, so again, increase the forecast accuracy, and then you might want to hold marketable securities, so you still earn something, not a lot, but rather than holding cash that earns nothing, you might want to hold marketable securities, so you have a similar liquidity power with cash, but at least you earn a little bit, earning a little bit from the marketable securities. Or for safety reason, you might want to negotiate a line of credit here, line of credit from banks, maybe lines of credit from banks. So line of credit means that the bank stands ready to lend out money to you up to a certain amount, maybe $500,000 within a year. So in case you need to draw the loan, then you just go to the bank because you already had a line of credit. However, if you don't use you made a deal with the bank, but you don't draw, for example, you don't draw any loan this year, then you still have to pay the commitment fee. So what are the financing policies? We have like moderate policy, we have aggressive, and we have conservative. So moderate is the like middle way, right? Aggressive means you are more aggressive in the financing policy, and conservative means that you're more conservative. So let's see an example here. So moderate means that you try to match it nicely. So let's see here. You have fixed assets, right? Fixed assets, and you have a permanent net working capital, permanent net operating working capital. So again, this would be your current assets after deducting current liabilities because it's net, right? Your current assets after deducting current liabilities, but the operating one, and it's permanent. Permanent would be like maybe your accounts receivable, the prepaid expenses, right? So and certain amount of cash, but permanent means you are not going in and out. You hold the current liabilities uh, in a stable manner, right? So of course you will collect your accounts receivable, but you will have a new one. You collect your accounts receivable, you have a new one. Cash also, can you imagine? You hold the cash, you need to pay off your bills or day-to-day expenses, but there's incoming one. So this is permanent. So you see how you will finance uh, is using your long-term financing. Maybe it's clear if I draw it like this. So you have your current assets here. You have your fixed assets, right? So you have all of your fixed assets plus your permanent current assets. So all of this here. Finance using what's that? You have current liabilities, you have long-term liabilities and equity. So it will be financed using this. So you see, it's they match. So they match one another. So this is called like moderate or normal policy, right? So here the non-permanent, right? Non-permanent current assets would be financed with the what's that? The current liabilities or short-term loans. See here, so we match them, right? So what about the what can you infer with, about the aggressive policy? Aggressive policy may look like this. So the aggressive policy might look like this. Right? You have current liabilities, long-term liabilities, and equity. So if this is aggressive, uh, even the fixed assets, fixed assets will be financed with what? Some of the fixed assets will be financed with current liabilities, right? So you are more aggressive. So you are willing to use the current liabilities to finance current assets and even some parts of the fixed assets. Right? So this is called the aggressive policy. But what about the other one? The other policy is the conservative policy. Conservative policy means that you are more careful. So even you will use you know uh, many some parts of the non-permanent. You have a permanent here, and you have non-permanent. So even let's say some parts of the non-permanent assets will be financed using this one. So you can see the difference, right? If in the conservative policy, you want to use as much long-term debt and equity as possible, even to cover or to finance your non-permanent current assets or some parts of non-permanent current assets. So you're very careful, right? So why is that so? Let's see here. So if you use a lot of like short-term debt, this is an aggressive policy, right? You use a lot of short-term debt to finance even your fixed assets. So what are the advantages? Low cost, right? Cheaper. You could imagine if you go to a bank, you say I want to borrow money for 7 months. Of course, the interest rate will be lower than the case if you want to borrow for 15 years. Common sense, right? So cheaper because it's shorter term, and you can get the funds relatively faster. Because if you say that you want to borrow the money for 7 months, of course the level of scrutiny will be less, right? It will be lower than uh, the situation if you want to borrow money for 15 years. And you can repay maybe without penalty. There's a possibility, but not always true. For example, you want to within you have 1 year, you borrow for 1 year, and you want to pay off because suddenly you have plenty of money, you can pay off your debt within 3 months without the penalty on the balloon payment. Right? You have balloon payment, right? Because you have 9 months to go, but you want to pay off the principal of the debt, right? So the balloon payment is made, and you may have the contract that says that would not be penalized. Yeah, maybe, but not always the case. But what about the this one? The disadvantages of the aggressive policy. Again, aggressive policy, you're using a lot of short-term debt even to finance fixed assets. Risk is higher, right? Because you have to repay the debt within a short period of time. Imagine if you borrow like uh, maybe $100 million for a project, right, from a syndicate of banks, and you have to pay it off within 1 year. Can you imagine? Every month you have to pay like 10 million, right, plus the interest. That's crazy, right? So you have to, if you want to pay like faster, short-term debt, then you have to pay a lot of money per period. So higher risk is essentially the main disadvantage of the aggressive policy. You can also borrow money by issuing commercial papers, but usually only a bona fide or reputable firm can do that because the commercial paper is usually issued with a short term period, maybe 9 months, right? Something like that. So if you are not bona fide enough, you're not reputable enough, that not many people would be interested in buying your commercial papers. So the interest rate would be a little bit above the risk-free rate, risk-free rate or the government securities rate. This would be a bit above because it's a short-term instrument, and usually this is issued by a higher rating firm. So usually the interest rate is not that bad. And then you can use cash budget if you want. This is very easy. You need to forecast your cash coming in, cash coming out. We'll go straight to the example here. Let's say in January you make a projection, or you have made a projection that you have collected 67 million somethings, and the purchases to be made in January is 44,000 somethings. Uh, you will have to pay salaries and wages and rent expenses. So the total payments here is 53. So cash inflow is 67,000 and the cash outflow is 53,000. So you have a surplus for that month of 13,000. Do you hear? 67 and 53 is 13,000 somethings, right? That's your surplus. And you already had cash on hand of 3,000. So the cumulative cash that you will have in January is about 16,000. Your target cash, for example, your target cash for monthly situation or monthly perspective is 1,500. So actually for January, you have a surplus of 15,000. Now let's see February, one more example here. You project to have a collection of 62,000, and these are your cash outflows. In total, your cash outflows are 44,000. So obviously you have, how much is it? Maybe 17,000 maybe. Yeah, 18,000 surplus. Right, 18,000 surplus. And in the previous month, you have, what do you have last month? Yeah, this one, 16,000. So this month your surplus is 18,000. Last month you already had 16,000. So in total, the cumulative cash as of February would be 35,000. And again, your target cash is 1,500. And so your surplus would be 33,000 for February, until February, as of February. Okay, so by doing this, you can make like an analysis and management. In certain month, you have larger surpluses, so you could be more relaxed in using money. But in certain month, uh, maybe you have deficits, you suffer from deficits because of some big payments in certain months. Then you have to be careful or more careful, more disciplined in using cash. Right? So this is quite useful to determine the level of level of discipline that you have to put in place in using your cash. Okay, depreciation. Should depreciation be explicitly included in cash budget? No, because this is not cash, uh, not a cash expense, right? So in accounting, of course, we admit the depreciation as an expense, right? Depreciation expense to actually to track to trace the uh, book value of a fixed asset from time to time, but this is not a cash charge, not cash expense. So some other potential cash inflows besides collection, maybe you can sell fixed assets. Of course, this is not a recommended way because you sell your fixed assets means you sell your productive assets. You're selling your engine of again productivity. So you only do this if you don't have, I think, any other choice. And you can borrow money by issuing uh, bond and stock, right? Additional bond and stock. You can earn interest from your investment, and maybe you're suing another company because of the patents, right, or intellectual properties. So you sue your competitors or other companies, and you might get money. But if you lose, you will pay anyway. So interest earned, interest paid. We have seen this one. So we include all cash inflows and cash outflows. About bad debt, maybe you have to make some provision here, right? For example, loan loss provision of 3%, meaning that we take into account the possibility that 3% of our collections might not materialize. So only 97% of the collections may come to pass or may materialize. So we can adjust this one to our cash budget, meaning that we see that or uh, we make a projection that not all of the collections could be collected, right? Not all of the receivable could be collected. Okay, so we have seen the working capital management, uh, the overview, and we talked about like cash, inventories, and accounts receivable, accounts payable, and accruals. These are typical items, typical components of your current assets and current liabilities. So thank you for watching. I hope this topic could benefit you. And again, this topic is a pair with the capital budgeting, because the capital budgeting is talking about fixed assets, and the working capital management is talking about current assets and current liabilities. So thank you. See you next time.